So episode 8, we're finally here, and I'm going to do it as quickly as possible. This was an extra long episode, so strap in, and here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, hiss and foes, welcome to the Culture Casino!
So we start the episode in what seems like the simulation, or at least a memory for Dolores, or a series of memories. Leading up to this, there was really a lot of flashbacks into her previous life, so we're subjected to more of that after the initial opening. And as you can see, she's reliving some of her time from Westworld. Her experiences after Westworld, or during Westworld, or outside of Westworld. And her experiences in Westworld when she started to go on the warpath in season 2. And we see elements of happy time in her life as well, including the time that she's solitary by herself. This is a big important scene at the end. As we move forward, we get back to the timeline that would be the real timeline, I would guess, and it's where Dolores is laying in the hangar floor where we last saw her. Not just hanging there, she's laying there, dead with her arm blown. And you can see that creepy guy, one of smarmy French dude's bodyguards, or I don't know, servants, whatever, shows up in the same hangar and notices that Solomon is now offline, which obviously Dolores took care of at the end of the last episode. He investigates her body and finds that her core has been taken. Of course it has. He also notices that Maeve is now on the floor. And she doesn't look to be injured in any way. We move on and we see Caleb on a motorcycle flying along pretty good, making his way to whatever destination some kind of virtual assistant is telling him to go to. My assumption is this is part of the plan that was created by the Solomon supercomputer, or the first version of the Roomba, I want to call it. I'm sure it's like Robamba or something like that. But yeah, so the big Roomba thing that's at Insight. So anyway, he's hauling tail to get back to the city, and then we get flashed over to where we left Stubbs and Bernard and William, who has them at the end of a shotgun. Of course, they try to have a meaningful conversation with him, saying, look, we can help each other. And while Bernard's kind of trying to work that out with William, Stubbs goes for his gun, and William shoots him with the shotgun. That seems to hurt quite a bit, puts him down. Bernard flees around the outside of a blue car, and as you can see, he hits the little button that makes him superpowered and goes bananas against William, fighting him off, but not beating him up terribly. It looks like he's trying to preserve his life. And of course, at that point, the San Francisco Police Department show up in one of their, Uber vehicles, transport, I guess, riot defense. They must have a lot of them, because that's the number 435 on the back of that vehicle. Anyway, they show up. William goes for a run, and the SFPD tries to get Bernard to surrender. He takes one of the officers' guns and, puts him down on the ground and points it at the SFPD officers, who reveal themselves to be, or at least one of them reveals themselves to be, a host. Yeah, that's right. This is the fellow from the first season that William dragged around by his, at the end of a noose. So anyway, we move forward, and he says basically, you don't want to do that. There's a blue container in the back of the truck, and of course that'll explode. So glad that didn't happen. The other guy is the other lackey, whatever, probably another host, brings out a case. The previous host from Westworld hands Bernard a case, I should say, and says, this is from our friend, which obviously is Dolores. I think the guy here is actually a Dolores copy too. He also gives Bernard a note with an address that he needs to go to in order to, work with the case. Then we get another, doomsday clock thing with all of the different areas where they're having all these different divergences, and we drill down to Los Angeles. So we get a nice entry scene into Los Angeles, where Caleb is pulling up to a location in the city. Looks like a park, although there's barricades and all of that. He makes it to the address, which is 3547 something or another. Looks like the same neighborhood where they filmed some of GTA 5. I recognize that bridge and telephone pole. And he makes a turn and finds himself in front of a gate, a security gate, so he pulls out his magic phone and pairs it with the lock and unlocks it magically. Then the little virtual assistant that's in his ear tells him where to go on the property. He does, then he finds a door that's also locked up with one of these magic locks that he pairs with his phone and opens up. Inside the room, we have a, I don't know, sarcophagus, coffin, something like that, or it looks pretty ominous, but it's actually not. It seems to be inside of it, seems to be property of Delos, which I already know what this is, and so do you. It is a body that's not quite outfitted, another version of Dolores, only an older version with the exoskeletal frame there and everything else running throughout the body. My biggest problem here is that when you look this body over, you will see no power source of any kind, or nothing that's significant enough to power something that's using that much computing power, etc., etc. But again, that's one of my problems with the design of these androids, robots, whatever. Anyway, so Jessie is in the process of putting the core back into her face, which this is kind of a neat scene. The core is accepted by a little motorized carriage that shoots out from her face, then it takes the core and then it pulls back into her face, and she comes back to life, or sentience of some form or fashion. Again, these are really amazing servo motors that are built into this body. I have major problems with this technically, but that's all right. They have a conversation. He talks about what her actual plan is for this revolution, etc., etc. They move through the conversation. She tells him about his past a little bit, and that there was a part of a live training exercise that the military trained them for against hosts. So they actually used hosts in Park 5. Park 5 is like a war world of sorts, where, essentially they train soldiers. So that's kind of cool. And as you can see, there's all these guys that they go through this military mission and they smoke them all. And they rescue the people that are in the town. And he notices that one of the hosts, when he takes off their face mask, actually looks like him. And then there's guys talking about, the people that they rescued, and obviously they're thinking about getting down on them. So, that's how men are, I guess. Anyway, so we move along back into the warehouse where Dolores and Caleb are talking. She breaks the chain. He put her in a chain. That wasn't going to hold her. She broke the chain, stood up, and then they talked more about what was going on, while she does this really cool thing of putting on her skin. And this is a neat special effect. They did spend an awful lot of time on it. I have to say, model-wise, they did an excellent job, and they did a great job in the special effects compositing these, because it's fairly seamless when they're putting this together. That's really good tech. Anyway, they continue to talk about, what happened the night that he discovered her, and was he really looking for anything, or what did he want? And he says, I just wanted to help, right? So we move along in the story, and we find that William is inside of this really fancy bank, I would guess, where the manager's there saying, hey, we thought you were dead. And he's like, yeah, I'm not dead. Where's my money? And he's like, well, they locked up your funds because supposedly you were dead, but after the sale of Delos, blah, 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 all this money. He's like, well, I want my jet and I want my money. I'm going to finish this $12,000 glass of scotch, whatever. And we move back to the main Delos building, apparently, I believe, yes. And we have Smarmy French Guy. Smarmy French Guy is here, and he is talking to Maeve. Maeve is there with her samurai sword. They have a discussion about her not quite getting Dolores this last time, and she needs to do better so that he can keep up his end of the bargain to provide for a place for her son, for Maeve and her daughter and everyone else to live happily ever after in a simulation of some sort. They get information from the security guy, and he obviously had downloaded the security information. I'm not sure why that wasn't available immediately, but anyway, of Caleb at Solomon and what he learns at Solomon and what he's attempting to create, which obviously is this alternate plan to have a revolution. And Maeve is instructed on where she needs to go and when, and then we catch up with Caleb and Dolores. Caleb and Dolores are in the city, which is, of course, tearing itself apart because humanity is just that fragile. And we move along to a spot where they are headed into a building. And Dolores, protects him, puts her hands on him, pushes him away because he doesn't know that there's these hostiles on the other side of this door, which I think is an elevator, but I'm not sure. Anyway, she fires a bunch of rounds into it, smokes these dudes inside this room, and they elect to take the stairs. So they move up the stairs and go across this bridge, and they find that they are being confronted by a bunch of guys. Except they're not actually being confronted. They're being joined by a bunch of guys. I guess these are some mercenaries that Dolores is hired to protect them and to help them run their operation. She does a little bit of programming on the criminal app, and they basically move forward into this area, which to me looks like either an airport or a fancy mall, but it's obviously abandoned for the most part. Anyway, they make their way into this place, and they find they're about to be ambushed, and the only reason they find that out is because Diversity Dolores appears in a hologram, and obviously is a distraction to try to engage Dolores, which she does. And Diversity Dolores says, look, I know what your deal was. You were going to have us all die, and that's not great. And, I'm running my own game now. So we have another player in the game, which we knew already, but she's basically just announcing her presence with authority. So we move along. And one of the guys gets sniped from behind. Another of the guys gets sniped from behind. So you got two guys down, bullets flying everywhere. Caleb reaches for Dolores. She kind of shrugs him off, but they run off to an area to hide while the other mercenaries try to fire the positions from the Overwatch and the other two people that are charging them. And Diversity Dolores walks through all of the bullets because obviously she's a hologram while all these guys are getting smoked, and basically says, you know what, Dolores, I'm coming for you, and you're going down, and I'm gonna keep ambushing you. Basically, various tactics like that. And Dolores herself actually negotiates via her virtual assistant to buy off the guy that's the Overwatch, the sniper, and successfully does that, and he smokes the other two guys and walks away. So we move along to Dolores essentially ready to take on the world, telling Caleb to run off because this is still not going to go the way that they want. They're apparently crossing back across the same bridge they did before. And she says, you need to get to Insight. So obviously he leaves to do that. She starts firing at the soldiers that are, going to confront her on the front side, and walking up behind her in some really cool tennis shoes from the 1980s is Maeve with her samurai sword, dragging it along the concrete, making some sparks, which are real pretty. Anyway, she says, hey, this is a whole mess. We need to stop this, or, I'm going to have to kill you. Dolores decides, I don't have time for that. So she starts to make her way down the bridge, shooting every single person that she sees, and then she goes into full kung fu mode, which is pretty cool here. And the guy takes one of the guy's firearms and fires through herself, killing two of the guys on the other side of her. That's pretty cool. And then she takes another guy for a ride over the railing, and they land on top of the car. Anyway, so Maeve witnesses all of this and kind of shakes it off, and then just goes after to pursue Dolores. And we catch up back with Caleb. Now, Caleb is making his way to the Insight Plaza area, which seems to be cordoned off with a bunch of rioters outside of it, of course, because they're all pissed off at Insight. Anyway, so these people are joining him. At first, he didn't know that they were joining him, but then they basically tell him that they're joining him, and they make their way to that plaza area, or closer to it. Now, we're back with Maeve, who's coming down the stairway, so she did not take the express elevator that Dolores did, and she moves to engage Dolores one-on-one with her samurai sword. Again, Dolores saying, I really don't want to fight you, Maeve. You need to pick a side. Why are you working for this guy? Blah, blah, blah. And then they fight. Again, more magic kung fu, which is very, very good. In fact, choreography is really good. The choreographed fight scenes are really good. This is very well directed. Oh, and by the way, it was directed again by a female director, which we'll talk about at the end of the video. But as you can see, They beat each other up, which is really cool. And then when Maeve goes to swing her samurai sword, she finds out that it doesn't penetrate Dolores' arm because she's built, obviously, with whatever mesh exoskeleton that they were originally built with. And then come to find out that during the course of this fight, as it continues to go on and on and on, Dolores smokes a couple of guys without even looking, or 3 of them, actually. And come to find out that it's revealed in this fight between the 2 girls that every single successful model was based on Dolores. Every single model before Dolores was a complete failure. Dolores was their one success. Happy accident, whatever. After they get to their final confrontation and Dolores chooses not to end Maeve, she starts to walk away, and slowly she's being, disabled electronically. And in her magic contact lenses appears Diversity Dolores. And basically Diversity Dolores must be the one that's taking her down electronically, which she does. She says more threatening things and, basically, you stink, you allowed for all this suffering, yada, yada, yada. And then she disappears. And Dolores is left immobile and probably just down for the count. We move along, and Caleb is with the good-looking security types, and they make their way to the riot. They're headed for the riot outside of this series of barricades, and they're, of course, hosing down the rioters, and there's a big riot robot that shows up and starts firing tear gas at everybody, and Marshawn Lynch shows up and delivers some toys to Caleb. He makes a really nice catch on a tear gas canister and throws it back, so that's cool. He says he's on crowd control, as is the activist lady actress person, and they are going to help Caleb as well. So they make their way to the edge of the barricades, and they point out that there is a police self-flying drone thing, taxi cab, whatever, that lands off in the distance beyond the barricades. Marshawn Lynch pushes his way through a barricade with a bunch of other rioters. They are quickly making their way towards the flying car thing. Riot cop notices this, levels his firearm to shoot Caleb, and Marshawn Lynch makes a heroic dive to save that bullet and catch it. Looks like in the chest. That probably hurt. The activist lady, is stunned by this, but she's compelled to go back and help her friend, or Caleb tells her to anyway, which she does, and rolls him over, and he's suffering, probably gonna die. Doesn't look good for Marshawn Lynch. Maybe he only had a 1-year contract here. Maybe he's gonna play football this year. Who knows? Anyway, so Caleb makes his way to the magic flying police car, gets inside, and takes off while observing all of the confrontations here with the riot cops. Seems like they're starting to open fire at this point. Anyway, he flies away. So we see this really cool scene where he flies away, and then we're back with Bernard. Bernard and Stubbs have shown up at an address outside of a house, and Bernard knocks on the door, talks to what appears to be a nurse lady, says, "I need to see her." He shows up in the house and finds out, oh my gosh, this is Arnold's old house, and there are pictures of Arnold's ex-wife and their dead son. I'm having to block that out because, YouTube. Anyway, they bring in the very, very elderly and obviously suffering from dementia of some sort, or major memory loss, version of his ex-wife, and they have a conversation. The conversation is basically like an old friend wanted me to see you. They talk a little bit. They talk about the dead child. He has a nice cry. They hold hands. It's a nice moment. And he's starting to realize what's going on in the real world and kind of what Dolores is doing. Now, he doesn't say that outright at this point, but this is kind of what's happening during the scene. He puts his hand on her face, and we cut away to the Roomba computer thing. Here, somewhere in the depths of Insight. So here we are at Insight. There's Roomba, and Roomba is now plugged in with a bunch of cables to Dolores. Surprised they need that many cables. Usually you only need one cable, but whatever. Jack in multiple places. So she's plugged into Roomba. They're trying to break her encryption, break her code, get this encryption key that they've been looking for since the beginning of the season, and they are accessing her cognitive files. They don't find the key right away, so he starts to query her directly, and that interrogation isn't going well. He tells her that basically she's going to lose memories if she doesn't cough up, the information, and then they start to delete data packages, which are her memories. So they're taking away the essence of her, all of her learning, everything that made her herself, which I guess is the way to go. Caleb arrives outside in the magic police flying thingy, and is promptly confronted by a couple of security people, actually 3. He pulls a gun out of his bag, shoots 2 of them real quickly, and then sneaks around behind the 3rd one while he's reloading. He instructs the guy to cough up the key card so he doesn't blow his brain out. The guy coughs up the key card, and we're on to insight. He makes his way inside with the key card, and he immediately is confronted by another guard whom he eliminates. So that was fun. Now he's made his way all the way to the area where the console is that you can access the Roomba. And he makes his way to the console for the Roomba. He takes the drive. He's going to access Roomba, put the drive in there, and cause all this chaos. And then he's confronted by the main, I guess now, security guy for Smarmy French guy. So he attacks him. He's got a garrote. He's going to try to choke him out. He gets him into a compromising position, but Caleb's got military training despite not having reach or strength or anything on height or anything on this guy. And he whips him over like wrestling style at the end, and the guy breaks his neck on the stairs. Mage shows up and says, "Look here, I don't want this to happen anymore." She's got her samurai sword. It's like, you need to cough that thing up. And he's like, I don't really want to. Then he realizes that she's a host, so he coughs up the drive thing, and they head downstairs. So as they're moving downstairs, they have some conversation. It's not really very fruitful, but, basically she insults him saying, "Wow, I can't believe you were so easily taken in by Dolores, yada, yada, yada. Must be because you're a man." Nice. And then we get to the basement underneath the Roomba where Dolores is plugged in. Now, they're trying to get the information from Dolores. They set him down forcefully in a chair, and smarmy French guy talks about, trying to get the information out of her, and maybe trying to get the information out of him for this encryption. Talks at length about Roomba and what Roomba actually does, and, says, I've tried to give people a semblance of life, yada, yada, yada. Caleb's not having it. He says, "Well, I tell you what, why don't you ask Roomba what was going to happen if you had successfully installed the drive?" And he forces him over to the computer to look at the answer to that question, and it shows the population collapse and then the end of human simulation. Wow, I can't talk. The end of human civilization after about 150 years. So that's not good. So anyway, Caleb looks at Dolores, and she's, upset, obviously. And of course, she doesn't think that that's what that plan was going to be completely. But, it is what it is. So he's asking her why. Smarmy French guy drops the drive. He stomps it under his shoe. And, chaos is prevented, theoretically. But not really. They're still trying to get that encryption key. So we'll get back to that. Now, on the outskirts of the building, this is the aftermath of the riot. The riot, for blaming Insight and all of that, and activist ladies being led away in handcuffs by, I guess, a policeman. So we're back to Roomba, and back upstairs with Maeve and one of the smarmy French guy's worker people. And smarmy French guy and Maeve start to have a discussion. And she, during the course of this discussion, starts to suspect something because she's hearing something electronically because of her weird telepathy thing. And during the course of the discussion, she figures out that he's actually being instructed by whispers from the Roomba thing. So he's actually not doing this himself. He's being told what to do by the machine, which is interesting. So he's essentially a host in a way. So Anyway, move on. She's like, yeah, you're a puppet. You're not in control of what you do. I can't believe I didn't see your strengths. I thought that was a great line. And she ends up talking directly with the Roomba thing, telepathically, I guess, and saying, what gives? Why are you using this source of communication with this human? And blah blah blah. So she feels like they might be holding up their end of the bargain, and she asks that question directly. And smarmy French guy says, I always intended to. He threatens actually to push the button on her and disable her, but he doesn't. And she makes one last bit of conversation looking at the Roomba thing, and we go back downstairs where Dolores is still plugged into this thing. They're still taking their time whacking out her memories, and they get deeper and deeper into her core, and the encryption they can't break. So Maeve says, wow, you guys are way too subtle. And she ends up engaging with Dolores directly, holding her hand and stuff like that, and asking her very carefully, what's going on. Nothing seems to happen, so smarmy French guy pulls his gun out, walks over, and threatens Caleb and says, look, you were with her forever. You've got to know what's going on. He fires the gun near his ear, which is not great. And Caleb turns to him and says, look, I wouldn't tell you if I knew anyway. And of course, a smarmy French guy doesn't necessarily believe him 100%, so he puts the gun to his head. He doesn't react the way we would want. And so he just pulls the gun back, doesn't shoot him, and then ends up having a further discussion with Dolores about the chaos and everything else that's about to come from what's happening, and that all of her memories are going to be gone, and that's going to be that. And, she's plugged into Roomba. She's obviously really, really upset, and all of a sudden, she screams, and it looks like she sends data or something up into Roomba, because the lines turn blue. I don't know what that is. Well, actually I do. I've seen it, but we'll get there. Anyway, so Maeve starts to have a telepathic conversation with Dolores, and they are in some sort of memory. And Dolores and her have a conversation about, what originally she was going to do. She was of two minds, to destroy them and destroy everything that was around them. But then she realized that there was beauty there, and that no matter what this event was going to happen anyway, where everybody, either came to realize what was happening, or they were going to have these catastrophic events for the human race. And, maybe if they just happened naturally, there wouldn't be these dire outcomes. That's a really cool thing. But while that's going on, we're back in the real world outside of this memory simulation. And Caleb's kind of, engaging with these guards, but not really fighting back. So she talks more and more about beauty. We keep flashing back and forth between her memory and the real time. And eventually, at the end of that conversation, Dolores is completely gone. Maeve's left in what's left of that memory, and then that fades. And as she comes back awake, she's stuck her samurai sword through one of smarmy French guy's bodyguards. And then she proceeds to have a quick conversation with smarmy French guy, who holds up the magic freeze you button and freezes her motor functions. Maeve is, prepared for it this time, and she uses her magic telepathy thing to explode the little electronic device that's in his hand with some really bad special effects. And then she proceeds to Ginsu up this entire room. So as you watch, this is a pretty amazing scene. And, oh wow, it's a room full of dead guys. So that's pretty cool. So you have Caleb standing pretty much in the same place he was at the beginning of the scene. And you have a smarmy French guy, down on the ground. Maeve notices, oh, wow, I got shot. Anyway, he's down on the ground with an owie hand, very uncomfortable. And then Maeve and Caleb have a conversation about what actually transpired and why Dolores actually picked him. I guess it goes all the way back to when he was training in that Park 5 area, when the other soldiers wanted to take advantage of the females that they rescued because they were hosts, because that's what the rich people would do. And Caleb talks them out of it by saying, look, are we those rich guys? No. So, we're going to bounce. So he protects all of the hosts. He's kind of a weird thing, but he does, and all of them leave to go to bed, which is really cool. And it's something that Dolores remembered. So because she has access to her memories now, this is something that probably made it so she saved Caleb in return. But she probably also expected Caleb's help again. So he's been led around by his nose the whole time because he's a dumb man. Anyway, we move along. He's looking at Dolores' dead body, presumably on the ground here. I don't understand why they did these hoses the way they did, but whatever. And the smarmy French guy comes to. He says, you know what, you guys are silly because, obviously, Roomba is already going to call the cops and all that. And Maeve says, nope, you're 100% wrong. Basically, Dolores just updated herself into the Roomba and has taken over the Roomba. And so it will only listen to Caleb. So that's fantastic. So Caleb is now the new boss of the Roomba. So Caleb tells Roomba, hey, you know what? Delete yourself. Which, of course, smarmy French guy is not really happy with. And Roomba deletes itself. Now there is no more Roomba, which is kind of cool. So we flash back to Stubbs and Bernard at this point. And they are driving to a hotel. And they get a hotel room. Obviously, there's nobody else in the hotel. They just take a room. And they get Stubbs situated in a bathtub full of ice and get him a little cocktail there. So he can wait to get repaired by Bernard, who needs to utilize the magic case that was given to him by the, copy of Dolores and Javier. I don't know. Anyway. So he opens the case, he gets out this magic halo, and he looks at the magic halo, puts it on, and it glows. He sees a database access confirmed. So he has now the encryption key, and that encryption key is now in his head. And all of a sudden we have, some really neat special effects, and he's just staring at it. Stubbs is like, what's going on? And he notices that Bernard slumps over and poof. Okay, so we're back with now Maeve and Caleb, who are now teamed up, and they are on a bridge that is now overlooking pretty much the end of everything. This scene looks exactly like the end of Fight Club, and instead of the music that played at that point, we have The Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd. So, yeah. Now, this was where the episode would end, because now we would have the credits, which we do. And these are the producers who put this all together and made the story so convoluted and difficult to understand and boring at points, and pointless pretty much so far since the first season. So, but we go on because there is an after credits scene, or after credits series of scenes, where it looks like we're back in a big city. I'm gonna guess Abu Dhabi or something like that. William's there, and he's walking into a very important Delos building, and he talks to the receptionist lady. Receptionist lady isn't helpful. In fact, she gets a security alert because he's demanding to, see where they build the robots. And a security guard shows up, and William does. He is, level the gun, shoot the dude in the head pretty quickly. Tells the lady, you know what? Let's not do any more of that. So he walks downstairs to where the robot area is, and he discovers Diversity Dolores, or Charlotte Hale, which he now knows as Diversity Dolores. And her arm's all burned up. He says, hey, your arm's all burned up. I thought you could repair yourself. He's like, yeah, no, it wasn't worth it. I wanted to remember what was done to me for a reason. And he says, well, I've discovered my purpose, and it's to stop all of you. And she's like, well, not really, because, here you are. And a copy of him shows up. And she's like, yeah, guys are really simple to reproduce. I bet you didn't know that. So he and his double, have a nice little battle here. You see, real William is, easily being disarmed. He and copy of William have a conversation, which I have to assume is another copy of Diversity Dolores now. Who knows? Imbibed with William's code, obviously. And then they have a struggle, and of course, a robot version of William kicks his butt and pulls out a big old Bowie knife and slits his throat. So pretty much we know for sure at this point William's toast. See, blood's dripping. He's good. This isn't the first time his throat's been, hurt, but this you don't come back from this. Anyway, so as he bleeds out, they welcome him to the new world. And as you can see in this room, this is where they're rebuilding an army full of hosts. And that's not quite where the episode ends, because we go back to where Bernard is, and he's been there a long time. There's a thick layer of dirt on this guy. I mean, there's like mega dust. So who knows where Stubbs, what happened to Stubbs, or if he's just laying in the tub and toast. Who knows? But Bernard wakes up. He looks like he has a purpose, or the crazy eyes, or the other. And we finally get to the end of the episode. Wow. So that took a long time. Not my fault. Stupid long episode, longer than normal, longer than the hour of normal. And I'm going to try to cut this video down even further. So if you see some edits, that's why. But this episode was better. The direction was excellent. Another female director. So as I expected, we tipped the scales clearly on one side of that. It was well directed. There was a lot more to this episode. It was kind of a cleanup episode, so they probably had to stuff more story in here. But they could have cut out like 45 minutes of stuff, because a lot of it was travel or useless dialogue or things we already knew. I could have cut 20 minutes out of this really easily. But anyway, that's the episode. It is probably a 2.5 out of 5 for me. So it's better than probably most of the other episodes. So essentially there's been 2 decent episodes this year, and this was one of them. Regardless, we left it on a cliffhanger, which we knew they were going to do. They announced season 4, which will be the last season. I'm sure that'll be a shortened season. In fact, others have surmised the same thing. And I wouldn't expect much. I honestly wouldn't expect much. Anyway, that's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed this recap and the review. The review was, this thing's 2.5. That's it. Anyway, thanks so much for joining me today and for this, last of the season 3 of WestWorld. Hope you got some value out of it. Please, subscribe if you're not already. Hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed it. Share it out. That would be great. And put some comments below if you have some questions or you want to clear something up, or you disagree with me. That's okay too. Leave those comments below. Thanks very, very much. I appreciate all of your time. Remember, stay healthy. Take care of yourself. Take care of others. Wash your hands. We do that every time now. Make sure you do it for 20 seconds. Have a great day or night wherever you are. And until next time, bye.
Thanks for visiting today. Be sure you're subscribed and hit that for alerts.
Yay!
Of course, like and share all of the videos that you can, as it helps with the algorithm. Have a great day.